everyone, and welcome to Hands Online Learning Session. I'm Aileen Riza with the AIM Center, and I'm here with my colleague who I'll let introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Elin Anderson, and I'm
Thank you, Elin. Here at the AIM Center, we're committed to working toward a more equitable world through math and science education. And you can learn more about our work by visiting our website at aimcenter.org. Along the way today, we encourage you to use the chat feature or the Q&A feature to communicate with us, to ask questions, to share your progress, give comments. And we just hope that this can be an interactive, playful session together. We're here today and we're going to build a spinning marker top. The playful process of making and engaging with this top can help learners of all ages develop curiosity around science. That's kind of our focus today, around science. And Elin, can you share a little bit about this playful making activity and how it's connected to more formal science learning?
Sure. Well, I love this this quote from the book Design, Make, Play that states that, or that shares that we have formal and informal learning spaces that children engage in. We know that there are formal spaces like our schools, classrooms, maybe labs, specific lessons, but there are also a lot of informal spaces, especially like the home that we're in. A lot of us are spending a lot of time in our home, that learning spaces that where learning takes place, and children are involved in such activities as cooking, gardening, and just playing and tinkering, and all those things actually involve science.
Definitely, this realm looks a little bit different that we're in, with a lot of children accessing their school or their classroom through home. And it's interesting that now those spaces are kind of colliding, but we have different places that we learn, so that's so important. Are there some other ideas that we're drawing on today through this lesson?
Yeah, so in addition to these shared learning spaces, the formal and the informal, that are definitely, we need to have a balance of both, and they really complement each other. We do also, with this activity, we have shared learning goals as well. And this activity really taps into the 3 dimensions that are within the next generation science standards, which are more, we think about more formal, formal spaces, formal education, school setting. And these next generation science standards involve disciplinary core ideas. So these are the things that scientists know, or that we know that children know. And this activity we're going to engage in really taps into physical science, spinning, motion, and our green, the green is cross-cutting concepts. And these are how scientists think, or how children think, and tap into things like cause and effect, stability and change. And also the 3rd dimension is science and engineering practices, and this is what scientists do to engage, or how children engage. And so these are things like planning, asking questions, engaging in inquiry. So even though we are, doing an activity that is definitely more of an informal and an informal space, it's still tapping into some more connected, or has a shared learning goal with more formal science concepts.
Yeah, definitely. That's a very good point. that these different settings are both valuable and they complement each other. And so we want children to understand that being a scientist doesn't mean you have to be in a lab or in a classroom. You can be a scientist at home, you can be an engineer at home in the things that you do and engage with, definitely. So not only are we looking at more formal science, you talked about the science standards and these ideas of these different environments, but we're also incorporating some making today, because we're not just looking at science or looking at a video or watching someone demonstrate, we're actually engaging ourselves. So what kinds of things are you bringing out in this activity in the making ideas?
So yeah, with the, again, this is a playful, informal science setting, but really tapping into some formal science concepts. And, and this, and in the process of making and tinkering, that's where this informal science or thinking about different science concepts happens, because the children are doing a lot of trial and error, really thinking about, okay, so I tried this and it didn't quite work, so now I'm going to try something different. They're thinking about cause and effect. Well, what happens when it spins? What will it do? So in the process of making and tinkering itself, and making and tinkering in and of itself, it's leading to some really rich ideas of more formal science concepts.
Yeah, and those are so important to have. I think it's important as an adult to emphasize those ideas that they're doing these things that scientists do, and therefore they're behaving like a scientist. They are a scientist or they are an engineer at these as these are happening. And although we talked about more formal science standards and some ideas of making and engineering, there's a lot of other things happening. As we're going through this activity today, we're going to highlight a little bit of mathematics, a little bit of art. So all of these things are still happening, but we wanted to take this first session or this part of our session in just kind of connecting them to some of those formal ideas, formal standards, and really emphasizing that they complement each other. The things at home that are informal or out of the classroom are still really important and really valuable. So before we keep going today, we're going to talk about this playful object that we're creating and the experience and process of making that. And engaging this in more formal science, you know, the NGSS is that formal science, and some parents might be kind of new to those ideas, especially if you have younger elementary. That might not be a great emphasis right now for them, but it's really important for them to start engaging in some of these activities. So let's go into the activity itself. So can you tell us a little bit more about this activity before we start making together?
Sure. So we're basically going to be making spinning a top out of a marker and some other found objects that you can find within your home. And again, this process of making and tinkering is an activity that is really an informal entry into more scientific ideas. It provides an avenue to recognize and discuss science concepts such as cause and effect and stability and motion as they're building and then actually engaging with the top itself. And then it also, we don't want to forget that it really is a STEAM activity. And when we say STEAM, thinking about the A in STEAM really stands for art. And well, because we're making the spinning top with markers, as they engage in playing with the top, it's really going to be making a piece of art in itself, because they can see and record what the top is doing as it's spinning. So that's a really fun thing about this activity too, that they will have a record of what they do when they spin the top on a piece of paper or whatever type of material you want to use. And then that piece of art gives the child a chance to think about what happened and you know, look at the different marks that they made. So that's a really fun piece of this activity too.
Yeah, definitely. It makes it fun and engaging when there's different aspects to it. And as we're saying about STEAM, we want to be clear that STEAM doesn't mean that every single letter of that acrostic, science, technology, engineering, art, and math have to be there, but that there's an integration of all those in the act or experience you're doing or the activity that you're doing. And there's some that are a little stronger and some that may be at the background. And so today, I think science and this aspect of making and engineering is really at the front of this activity, where those things are going to be probably the greatest focus here. But art is still happening. And like we said before, a little bit of math is going to happen as well. So we really encourage you that through these hands online, that you have the materials and that you make with us, right? So let's talk about what materials we need, because this one is really versatile and flexible about the materials that you can use. So can you share with us? And maybe if you are still gathering your materials, you can use this time to kind of listen and look around and kind of get ready to make with us.
Yeah, definitely. So materials to start, you're going to need some markers, some colorful washable markers. You definitely don't want to use permanent markers because it may go off the paper. So definitely washable markers. If you have, you can use any type of round paper plate. If you have small paper plates, those work well. Any type of small, like plastic lid. Here I have a top of a salsa jar. Even, any type of little plastic lid if you want to just experiment with different things. And then also, the initial idea was with the old CDs, old music CDs or rewritable CDs, which we don't use as much anymore. So you may have some of these lying around the house. So these are really good because the hole is really just about the size of the marker. And then you'll need some Scotch tape, scissors. If you want to use putty to secure the marker to whatever round top you're putting it to, that's fine. But I found in my tinkering with this that tape, just clear tape works just fine. But if you're working with really young children, tape might be a little hard for them to handle. So if you have some silly putty or even that sticky tack that you use to put up pictures, that works well. But yeah, tape is just fine.
So I really love this idea of just looking around and seeing what you might use, and not necessarily for just making one top. You might make lots of different tops with lots of different materials that you have, because you highlighted a lot of different ways that you can make the circular base. So like I found my yogurt lid in the recycle bin that would have gone out. So grabbing that, rinsing it, and getting it ready to make a top. And CDs might not be as prevalent, like music CDs, but I was looking through, little children love to watch their cartoons over and over, and after a while, it just kind of glitches or gets scratched. Some of those might be some that you might say, oh, this one's had it, and use it as a top, and another way to reuse something that maybe will just, be discarded or is lying around. So lots of different ways we encourage you to explore. I know, Elin, I wanted to highlight the markers, because we were talking about different things that can make different prints on your paper. So if you're using maybe a thinner or smaller circular lid, maybe a thinner marker might work. But we were thinking that the thicker marker with maybe the CD was the easiest thing for a younger child to do, and gives them a lot more ability to do it themselves with a little bit less help. And we know that little kids really like to do things on their own, and they really feel proud when they're able to accomplish something. So this flexibility allows for children of different ages to access this in different levels. And so really look around for the things that is around your home that you might explore with. Different adhesives, different circles, different markers, has a lot of different ideas, and really explore with us.
Yeah, when I make mine, I'm going to use the marker, but I know they have the smaller markers for younger children. Those might work well, the little short ones. even chalk. Like if you have sidewalk chalk that's big and you can find something that you want to play with, putting that through to make a top. Just crayons, different types of crayons might work too. Just it's really up to your imagination and curiosity.
Yeah, definitely. So let's go ahead and go through maybe some of the steps. Elin has her camera there so that she can show us kind of some of these steps. And a lot of these steps are going to be really depending on the material you use. But if you have any questions about a material, Elin's experimented with lots of them, so please ask a question in the Q&A while we're making, but hopefully you've had time to kind of collect those together, and we'll turn it over to Elin to kind of show us some of those steps on through the making process and highlight some of those places where a young child might alternate something and how we let them explore even through the making process.
Sure, yeah, definitely. If folks have questions, please, or comments, please feel free to use the chat, and we are monitoring that. So I'm going to start with just let's try the paper plate first. And so one thing you might ask if you're working with children is, you know, well, where should we put the marker through? Where should we put the hole for the marker? And you know, we as adults have had a lot of experience with things that spin, maybe have, you know, delved into that in our science classes, but you know, young children are still learning and experience different things, so they might, you know, want to put it like here. So if they, you know, I would let them choose like where they want to put the marker in. So you could just, you know, maybe help them think about making a mark, and then this is where they may need a little help just cutting. And again, you want to start out by not making the cuts too big so that the marker can fit through. So I'm just going to fold it a little bit.
And we mentioned a little bit before, I think, when we were getting ready for this hands online, is that you might go to the toy box and find some tops that they have. You know, tops are pretty common little toy. We get them at the pizza places when we win tickets and different, you know, party favors. So they might have some tops in a toy box, and you might look at it and first ask some questions like what they notice about a top, what does the design look like, how does it work, how does it move, you know, before they start exploring with actually making their own, which is a really great experience for them to have. And some of them might notice that that's going right through the center, and that might not be a detail they address. So I think Elin's pointing out a really good part is to let them explore and see what happens if it's not in the center. It could make a different kind of design on your paper that actually it's desirable and kind of interesting to look at.
Yeah, so here I have the marker in here sort of off to the side, and if I try spinning it, it still spins, but it definitely, you know, it does some interesting things, and so that would be something fun to talk about. And so they may want to just try, especially with the paper plate, because it's easy, playing around with different spots in the plate, and you know what happens when you put that in, or put the marker in that spot. Does it spin faster? Does it spin slower? Does it spin longer? You know, how long can we get it to spin? So that is really interesting. Then with the CD, I have found that, again, it's just the right size for your standard marker, and just can really be secured with 2 pieces of tape. And the nice thing about the CD is a lot of them have this clear space in the middle. So you can look at a down at what you're spinning, or, as it spins, and actually sometimes almost see the mark being made, which is really cool. And also, I noticed when I was experimenting that the CD definitely has a different weight. It's a little heavier than the paper plate. So again, just putting it in and playing around with spinning it. Ooh, that went for a while. And just the different marks that it makes. And also, thinking about, okay, so this is, I put it down a little farther on the marker, but what would happen if I put it higher? Because this is, you can adjust it, pretty easy to adjust. So that's something that is fun to play around with, and also different colors. I mean, it's really easy to interchange the different colors. So if they're really interested in making the different marks and just filling up the paper, how would they do that?
That's great. I think that's the CD one might be a great one for little children to first try, and then maybe try the paper plate and ask where they would put the marker through and see if they attended to that centerpiece or not. I mean, I think that this one, the goal can be so many different things. I mean, the goal doesn't have to be a spinning top that spins a long time. It could be a spinning top that gives you a pattern that you like on your paper after it's finished spinning.
Yeah, there's so many different different possibilities and different things that you can do. But again, as you can see, just in this little time that I've spent showing you these, the amount of just thinking about the design and the engineering aspect of it is really, really they're fun. And I think that just that trial and error, that process of trying something. So
so you've shown the paper plate, Elin, and even with the plastic lid, this might be a question, but for a child who does notice that it has to be through the center, what kind of tips would you give them to find the center? I mean, like on my lid, I have a little almost like a little stud here in the middle because it's plastic and it kind of shows the center because of how these are made, but a paper plate doesn't. So how would you give some support to even parents or a child who say, how do I find the exact center of this?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. And here I have one that's a lid, one I made out of a lid. So I would, in fact, I'm going to set that aside because I'm going to grab another paper plate. So again, I would say, well, let's see what happens if we just fold or have them think about, like you said, if there's a dot in the middle, just maybe share. And you could do this with a plastic lid too. What happens if we fold this in half this way, and then fold it in half the other way, and then I'm noticing that where those lines cross is about the center, and that would be in a really is probably a good place to put our marker. And so really it taps into some nice math concepts as well, like finding the center of a circle. Yeah, and again, thinking about how the marker has to be, when it spins, it's perpendicular, but what happens if it's maybe a little bit tilted? So a lot of really interesting things to notice.
Yeah, definitely. And depending on how old they are, they might have heard of some of the parts of a circle. So, when you fold it in half, you're finding that diameter. Mm-hmm. And, the line that goes right through the center of a circle. And then if you fold in half again, where those two diameters intersect, the intersection point is the center. So, depending on how old they are, some of these vocabularies are just, diagrams in their math book. But when you're actually making and using those, because it's helping you make better or make what you're desiring to make, then you see the application of mathematics in these ways. So I think that this is a really important aspect to bring out. Finding the center of a circle is maybe something we only think happens in the formal classrooms, but
Yeah.
in the informal spaces, we could bring those as well. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think that that's a great thing to highlight.
And it's something that they're using. I mean, why do we need to find the center of a circle? Well, we need to know where to put our marker. And so that's something that's during this process is really relevant to them. So yeah, it really is something that they're using in the moment.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so we hope you've been making with us and probably trying out your top as well. We're going to give you about 5 minutes just to go out and try your tops. Take some photos. We love for you to share them on social media, and highlight Ames ED at Ames ED when you do that. And so we'll give you about 5 minutes to go and play a little bit, and we'll come back and we'll share what we discovered or what we noticed. We hope you're really engaging with us at that time. So we'll see you back in about 5 minutes. everyone. Welcome back to Ames Hands Online. And today we're making spinner marker tops. And we just had a 5-minute break to just kind of play and see what we noticed. And I know that we mentioned that we're spinning the tops, and you might look at other tops that you have in your toy box to kind of look at how they spin. But we also wanted to mention that there's so many things out there that spin. And you might think about the things that you've seen spin in your environment, but also how you move your body when you're trying to get it to spin. So how much force are you using? How are your fingers twisting? That sometimes is hard for a young child to do. And getting that experience and how to use a top is great practice for motor skills, but also just talking about what are we doing with our bodies as we're seeing it spin or trying to get it to spin, because tops spin in different ways and there's different kinds of tops. And so we're definitely inviting you to use the Q&A, the chat, to let us know how your top worked, what things you notice, and please tag us if you're putting the pictures on social media so we can kind of engage and share that together. So we wanted to also, we didn't get to do, Elin, is show your video. You had a little short video that maybe you wanted to share with some children that were curious about what happened. So can you give us a little background to this video before it gets queued up and in place?
We were so excited to get into making. Yeah, no, again, in the process of experimenting with this and just tinkering with making, I had one of the CD, the spinning tops made with the CD just laying around. And I had a friend a high school friend from out of town was in town this summer. So she stopped by and her kids just automatically just picked it up and just started, I had a piece of paper there. So I'm like, try it out. So they put it on the floor and we're just really experimenting, like what you said, thinking about how they could twist it to make it spin.
Yeah, so there's a video, It's playing now. And I had mine lying around, and I have 3 daughters, and they were like, what is this? And they were spinning it. And I can see as she's spinning it, the young girl in the video, how it kind of vibrates. And when it does that, it makes some really cool patterns on the paper that my daughter was noticing. She's 8 years old, and she was kind of noticing, wow, look at these patterns. So you don't necessarily get that with the top that you get in your toy box, but you notice more of those patterns because you have a marker on your top.
Right. Again, using the marker is just so interesting because the children get an instant record of what they did. And so they can like look at it and think about, I wonder what was happening when the spinner made that mark, or how can I get it to spin to make it this mark again? Up here we have some just pictures of doodle, or I guess you would call it artwork of different playing with the spinner. One is just using all one color, and then I have one where I was using a couple different colors, switching it around and experimenting with what we were talking about, like different materials. Like I think I was using the CD part of the time, the seating top, and then I was using the plastic lid for part of it, and then I just all on one piece of paper just to experiment and play. It was fun. I had a good time.
I love the colorful one. I think that one's so beautiful and has so many different designs and patterns, and just like what we call spirals, when you see those circles over and over, and just like really interesting to see the different parts of it. And for young children, they can say, what does that look like? Like, what does this remind you of? And the things that they might find in there, when children stare up at the clouds and they can see elephants, or that kind of looks like a bear, that kind of looks, there's so many things that they could see here and might notice the shapes or the different shapes overlapping each other, and what they might see in something like this, some artwork that they might do.
Sure. And they might just get really involved in like trying to fill up the whole piece of paper. I was just using a regular piece of paper, but it'd be fun to get like a big piece of paper and just, lay it out and have kids go to town on that, just, you know, spinning all over the place. Would be really fun.
Yeah, definitely. So we're going to debrief this activity a little bit. Still feel free to put anything in the chat, a question or a comment that you might have. Part of our Hands Online is not only introducing you to an activity and thinking about the objects in the lesson or maybe the standards that are coming out in the lesson, but also looking at how we as an adult engage with a child, because part of these activities aren't just providing the materials and telling them what to do and then letting them go off and do it, but really engaging together, and the collaboration that happens between an adult and a child who's engaging in this, and some questions we might ask, some things we might notice, and really using that as an experience that is doing STEAM together. So Elin, you want to share some of that with us, maybe debrief some of this experience around some of those ideas?
Sure, sure. A lot of the questions, you know, we talked about as we were going through, but just really just as you are engaging again, and it's so important to engage with the child in this activity, just, you know, notice their joy and their and excitement as they are making and tinkering, maybe how long they are able to engage with the top, like you were talking about, how they can what does their body need to do to get the top to spin? And that's a great question. We talked a little bit about noticing their language. So it's a great opportunity to bring up some science and math vocabulary, spinning, force, motion, center, circle, diameter, just all perpendicular if they're a little bit older, and really getting into those geometry concepts. Really, it's a great opportunity to bring up the vocabulary in an informal way that's again relevant to them. It's relevant to what they're doing, and so therefore probably more likely to stick with them, and you know, and they'll understand what those definitions mean. Maybe again, it's a great way to, with science, to get them thinking about that iterative process of science, the trial and error. So just that idea of cause and effect. So to have them think about what worked, you know, why did it work? What did you notice? What do you wonder? And again, why, if it didn't work quite the way they wanted to, why didn't it work? You know, and what do they notice and wonder about that? What could they try next? And also maybe just again, thinking about the iterative process and the science and engineering aspect, thinking about the design. What could you do to make it spin faster? Where could you put the top, you know, higher, lower? Again, bringing in a lot of rich math language. So again, what else?
Really like open-ended.
Very open-ended. What else spins? What else do you think would spin? What do you notice around you that spins? So we tried things that are you have a circle top that spins, but maybe they want to try something that is square and see if it spins.
Yeah, that's a good idea. And you have an example, don't you? Do you have an example there of a different top that you made? I thought that one that you made out of paper.
I do. So actually, as we were talking about square, yeah, this is one that I found on actually just searching through YouTube on a top that you can fold out of a square piece of paper. And I just put a design on the top, and this, you just, oops, let me get some more room. You can spin it again, just in the way that I'm spinning it. I'm using two hands, oops, to get it to spin. And the way you fold it, it sort of makes a point at in the center of the bottom of the square, which I think has something to do with, you know, again, getting that
getting all the balance and gravity and all that good stuff. But just how does this top spin? And again, with our spinner top, we were making art on the surface on the paper, but this actually is fun because you're designing something on the top and then seeing what the design does when you spin, which is really fun too.
Yeah, that is fun. And was that made out of square sheet of paper that you folded? So no cutting, just folding it?
No cutting, just folding it.
That's pretty fun. And it also gives you a different sense of how you move your body, because you're not just using one hand like you do with the tops we made with this marker. You have to kind of use both of your hands and get a kind of adjusted force there that you're using.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Another reason I really like this activity is that it's a pretty simple activity to get done before you can use it. So, young kids have, sometimes short attention spans and very little patience on wanting to get to the end of something. So it's really great because you can make one and then try it out and then start asking those questions. What if we did this different? How do you think it would spin? Because you mentioned like the perpendicular of the marker going through the circle. And then we talked about what if the circle's higher, what if it's lower? And so asking those questions and then making another one or altering the one you just made is just different ways to kind of explore. So it is that iterative process, but in this case, it's not necessarily right or wrong. It just depends on what your goal is. So, you might hear the child say, I wanted to spin longer. Okay, well, what could we try to get it to spin longer? And they might say, I wanted to make those spirals that it made before on the paper, whatever their goal might be. It comes out through that process, and then you just try something different. I mean, there's not really a right or wrong way. And sometimes in, STEM or science and math, we feel inadequate because we didn't get the right answer. And that's what we think all math and science is like. But this really brings out a lot of science and math, and it's just really play. I mean, there's no really penalty for making a mistake, because is there really a mistake? No, there's just something else to try. So I think that that's one of the things that we definitely want to highlight as adults, that these informal spaces can be fun and playful.
Yeah, again, like you were saying, it is a very informal, playful activity. The materials are very simple. There's not a lot of steps, so it is pretty easy to get it done and then engage with it. And then it's easy to take apart. So if they're not happy, they can take it apart and then play around with it. Depending on how much material you have, you could, make a top with all your markers and then play around. But yeah, very, very easy to take apart and then readjust. And so, which is what we know scientists and engineers do all the time. It's what we do all the time when we're tinkering and thinking about solving problems, not only in science and engineering, just in everyday life and in other content areas as well. So that's one of those ideas with having an activity that's a playful activity where they can engage in some problem solving. That's, again, playful and fun, low stakes. It's just, let's make something that we can play with.
And if you have several children, like 3 that are around, the same age or in that elementary space, they all can be engaging in the same activity, but just at really different levels. And it's really interesting to have, an older child share what they did, and the younger child is listening and watching, and the experience of all that learning really is highlighted through something like this.
Yeah, definitely. I wanted to share too that in exploring and tinkering with the marker top, I found that the Exploratorium in San Francisco has a whole, they're doing a lot of tinkering at home, and they have on their website space devoted to different math concepts, and they have math and science concepts, and so they have spinning as one of them. So if you get really into exploring spinning, I'd encourage you to
share your ideas on their on Twitter. They have a hashtag explore spinning, hashtag explore spinning, and please share that with us as well. Yeah, so I encourage people to connect to the Exploratorium too. That's a little a little clip of their website. And again, it's just, if you go on Twitter and put in hashtag explore spinning, you'll find a lot of different videos, ideas, things that are that people are exploring. I posted a couple pictures of my marker top spinners, and it's just really, really cool to see what other people are doing. And again, another way to help extend this conversation and to get more ideas and to share what folks are doing in these shared learning spaces that we have.
Yes, that's a great resource. I think it was funny to kind of see that overlap of their emphasis and then our webinar happening at the same time, but it's a great way to kind of look at other things that are spinning. And then, you know, as we were talking about this activity, a child might engage in this activity and then it might go to the side and then they might re-engage a few days later or the next day. But then to just get them to start noticing, like, what other things spin around them. When they're on their bicycle, what's spinning? You know, when they're in the kitchen, what spins? You know, when someone's making a smoothie, or, you know, the fans that we have in our house, like all these things that are spinning around us, and really engaging them in that idea and introducing them into just their own environments where they live, and the science that's happening around them is so important. So is there any last things you want to share, Elin, to those that are still watching and ready to engage a little bit more as they go off?
No, I just encourage folks to just keep on exploring and tinkering with their spinner. I would love to see some pictures or videos of what people create, or if you have your children engage in spinning, things that you come up with. I think, again, it's just a fun, engaging way to get children involved in thinking about the concept of, if I'm making a playful spinning top, getting them to think about like spinning and what else spins, and it just could open up a lot of great open-ended exploration into just some more formal science ideas, just in a really, really playful way. So I just encourage everybody to keep on spinning.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Elin, for bringing this activity to us and for sharing that your experience, sharing it with those who are watching, and hopefully that's going to spread. We just want to let you know before we end our session that you're still open to still communicate with us. Remember, you can find us on AIMS, aimscenter.org. And as well, we're posting resources. So we had an AIMS HandsOnline last month that was on around making a shape viewfinder, and you can go there and there's one-pagers that you can use to revisit those, to remind you of the questions to ask, the things to notice, the materials you might need. These are things that are free to use, maybe as a teacher, as a parent, to use with your children or your students and to share with others. So you can find those there. And we also wanted to remind you that next month we have another HandsOnline, and it's called Fun with the Catapult. And so you have your materials if you'd like to get those ready a little bit beforehand. There are things you'd find around the house, but maybe things you need to start saving now. So we definitely want you to be prepared to engage with us again in this fun STEM activity that's collaborative, that brings families together around math and science, and really hopefully that brings a lot of joy into those environments. I hope you've had fun with us today. And I again want to thank Elin for sharing that with us. We'll be here for a little while after if you have any more questions, but until we meet next time, thank you on behalf of AIMS, and we hope to engage with you again in the future.